he said something really interesting. He said, I don't know if time will ever come, but I may forget my wife's face over time. But he said, I will never forget what I saw in space during that experience.
Wow. Today, we have the incredible opportunity to hear from Stan Harward. As the principal of Central Elementary when Victor Williamson first introduced the idea of the Voyager, Stan played a crucial role in bringing the concept to life. His leadership helped structure the program in such a way that laid the foundation for the Space Center as we know it today. In this interview, Stan shares how he came to be at Central Elementary, his perspective on the key victories in getting the Voyager up and running, and the impact it had on the school. So let's jump right in and hear from Stan Harward.
So I guess I've had quite a long career and I'm still at it, actually. In education, I started as a teacher. I taught 6th grade for 2 years, 5th grade for, I think, 10 years or so. Over at Westmore and at Vineyard in Orem. And then I moved from there. I got a principalship, and so I was principal of Central Elementary. And then actually, I think I was there for about 12 years or so, and then another 2 or 3 years at Cherry Hill Elementary in Orem. So I spent the bulk of my principalship was here. Then I went over into the district office and ran I was over the K-12 literacy programs in the district. And I did that for, I think, 3 years. I went up to BYU for 1 year and ran research programs for them. And then was hired at Utah Valley University as a professor. So I've been there. So I was a professor in language arts and literacy, and then I was a department chair, and then right now I'm associate dean in the School of Education there at Utah Valley. So a lot of years in education from different aspects. So,
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was actually looking up some of your details, and I found your research articles, kind of a compilation of there, and I was curious because you have a lot of research papers that you've published about kind of spelling or literacy or reading or things like that. But then there was one that said The Final Frontier.
Yeah.
Was that by chance about the Space Center?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to find it online, and it said, you have to request it, so maybe I'll probably ask you later.
I think I have a copy I could send you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, it was we wrote up, I think it was, can't think of the journal.
I think it was Tech Trends.
Yes, Tech Trends, yeah, so it was kind of
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, this looks like it might be about the Space Center, 1995, around that same time. So.
It was. Yeah.
That's cool. Do you remember, just very briefly, what were you studying, or what were you publishing about?
Well, we were looking at the center. Part of it just telling the story of how a little bit of what it is, how it started. And how that idea of, like Vic was talking about, experiential learning. And so very, very unique for an elementary school to have something like that.
Yeah.
And we're, just such a different experience for kids from just their normal everyday routine in a school that just, but anyway, so just wrote up that story and the kinds of learning that took place and things, so that, and so it got published.
That's cool.
In Tech Trends.
That's really cool. So out of curiosity, what made you decide to go into elementary education?
I think my father was an educator, after World War II, he came back and went to BYU and got his teaching degree, and eventually, and he went into education. Really, really good teacher. So he spent his career teaching, and there's a principal, and he worked in the state office for a while over reading. And I think maybe just watching him and being part of that, that probably helped me kind of decide to go that direction, because I felt kind of natural at teaching, and I seemed to enjoy it. So
that's really cool.
That's what took me there, I think.
That's really cool. And how did you get to be at Central? What brought you to Central? I know being a principal, was this like your first assignment?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yeah, so I would, like I said, I think I taught for over 13 years. So I had a really good foundation of teaching, which was good. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people teach for 3 or 4 years and they go to the principalship, and I taught for a little longer, so I think it really helped ground me and helped me become a better principal, actually. So then I got this principalship, and excited to come here. And Vic was a teacher, taught 6th grade. He had been here for, I don't think too long, but for a few years. So, yeah.
What were your initial impressions of Vic?
As a principal, he's one of those teachers you're really grateful to have in the school. I mean, he just had a positive influence on kids, on the school, and he was looking for new things. He was, didn't want to do the same thing all the time, and had that interest in space especially, so that was fun to watch that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so he was already at that time doing like his Young Astronauts Club, Super Saturdays.
Yes, I don't think he had the Super Saturdays, but we started out with just he started an after-school Young Astronauts Club. And that went really well and grew in interest, and then I think from there it just kept expanding.
So how did you go from that Young Astronauts Club to eventually building a full space simulator on the back of the school?
Yeah, it was sort of an interesting time. The interest grew. I think he started doing some Saturday things with the kids, and then after the Challenger disaster, they came out with the Kristen McCullough Space Educator Grant, and they were going to give one to each of the 50 states, I believe.
Oh.
And it was $25,000. Back then, $25,000 meant much more than it does today.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was an interest in that, and so I think I can't remember if Vic found it or anyway, the information came out about it. We thought this might be a perfect time to expand and do some things. So there were some sections that you filled out of the grant, had to have my approval. I can't remember if we have to have district approval or not. I don't know. Anyway, and then so we filled it all out, sent it in, and he actually got the grant.
Huh.
And so that was exciting. Then I think the grant there was a classroom that we had an extra classroom in the school, which is kind of precious in a way,
Mm-hmm.
But he asked if we could have that classroom to do some things and make it into kind of a little space center. And I thought, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Let's do it. It's vacant. We're not using it. And so that $25,000 was originally going to be used trying to get some money to do that. But when that $25,000 came, we thought maybe we could do something even more, build a little addition on or do something. So then there was some other money, I think, that came from Apple. And there were a few grants that we started getting. And from there, we looked at building not only that classroom, but just outside there was some space where you could actually build another section.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there, we looked into what it would take to build it, and I even started looking at contractors. We got district approval. I mean, because so that we needed to keep them informed. Of course, but eventually things just worked out, and so we were able to pour footings and get a design, pour footings, and start building that space center. And actually, it's interesting because several people, maintenance people from the district, were willing to come over and help with it.
Oh.
So we had hired private people, but there are people in the district that were so interested in it, they would volunteer their time to come over and help build it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So by then, like, I guess word had spread enough and people were actually very interested.
Yeah. So the word was out that they're going to build, and then what the anticipation of what it might be when they're done, and when we were done. And so eventually we did get it built, and we had from there, it was, the first idea was mainly our own school. But the larger it got, the more I think we realized that we should involve other schools. They could bring field trips there. And so when the center took some time to build, it wasn't easy. And Vic, of course, just dedicated he just was so good at, and also looking for other opportunities and grants. And I think Apple Computer donated, I think, 25 computers, our first computers. And others donated materials and other things. But so eventually we were able to get it built, and then it became kind of a big deal, and the district was quite interested, now that they have this, and we were going to start some, and we had the classroom where we could bring people in and have lessons, and they had the spaceship where they would go in and have their mission, And so what would happen is, I think when we first started bringing classes, one class would be in the classroom with space lessons and different things they did. The other class would be on their mission. Then halfway they'd eat lunch, and then they would trade. And so...
That's very similar to how it's done now.
Is it?
Yeah. They have the classroom, and then they eat lunch, and
then they switch.
Places.
Yeah. So and then more people became interested. There were volunteers, but there were also I think we hired like an aide. It was an aide, but he was so smart. I mean, he was almost volunteering his time. And he helped, so it took more people than one, of course, to run it. And so we had some people of interest. One thing that was interesting is once it was built, the dedication was really quite something. And we wrote to Jake Garn. He was a senator from Utah. He was, and Jake Garn had always had an interest in space. He was very protective of NASA. And so when they were sending space shuttles up, NASA decided to not only send crews up, but invite different people. And so they wanted to invite a senator, if he's willing, to go up. And because of his interest and his support, they invited Jake Garn, and he took him up on it.
Wow.
So he went up in the space shuttle, and of course they went around the world several times, the Earth several times, and so when we built the center, we contacted his office, and said, "Is there a chance that you could come and talk at the dedication?" And we didn't know whether he would or not. Busy as a senator, and he said, "Yes, I'll be glad to."
Wow.
So during the dedication, he gave the most fascinating talk. It was just amazing. He talked about space. He talked about his experience. he said that as they got up in space, he looked out and he could see over 30 different shades of blue around the Earth. And he said that out of the back of the ship, there were like these fireflies, they're spark type things, but just all over coming from the back of the ship. He talked about the beauty. He said, I just cannot express to you in words the beauty of the Earth. And he said that at the time he talked about the different wars that were going on down on the Earth, talked about different, and he said if they could only see what I could see right now, this big, beautiful, this little, I guess a speck in space, but just floating in space, that we all live on, and that they might see the world differently. But he did say his wife, a couple of years before that, his wife had been in a tragic automobile accident, and was killed, and he said something really interesting. He said, I don't know if time will ever come, but I may forget my wife's face over time. But he said, I will never forget what I saw in space during that experience.
Wow.
So I guess, anyway, those kinds of things. So anyway, we had the dedication, and then from there it just kept going.
That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah.
So how, I guess, rewinding back to when Vic initially pushed the idea to you, what was your thought? What did he say? What was your thought? And what did you imagine it was going to be?
Yeah.
And then how was that different from what it eventually turned into?
Yeah, good questions. So when I was a new principal, and of course you want to do a really good job, and you want the school, and Central was an amazing school because it had so much history to it. It'd been there for over 100 years. I think 3 different schools. You could even go down in the basement of Central and see part of the last foundation of the last one. And so it was an older school, had a lot of tradition, had children and parents and grandparents and great-grandparents all going to the same school. So that was one of the strong aspects of that school. It was also a school that was it was one of the oldest schools, of course, in the district. It was not. It was run down a little bit. It was. It was just. There were a lot of things that hadn't been. Some of the custodians hadn't been taken very well care of. But when I got there, I thought, okay, and so for me, it was perfect to have somebody like Vic there that wanted to do some new things and venture out. A couple of other teachers were doing different things too, but Vic, so it was just a natural to say, yeah, absolutely, let's go for this. This is a great thing. I don't know that any of us had any anticipation of what it might turn into, but we knew it'd turn into something, and so, yeah. When he asked, the first thing that he asked for is that classroom, the vacant classroom.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And then after that, it became raising money and more sophistication of what was done, and so just one thing led to another.
Did you run into any issues? I know you've mentioned in the past that it's like, well, the right person was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Were there any bumps in the road getting to the Voyager's eventual opening?
There were probably quite a few. I'm just trying to remember on some of the. I mean, everything we did was a challenge. The pouring the footings. The engineering we didn't, Vic and I were not builders, and so we didn't realize you don't just go per footings. You've got to have an engineering company come over and make sure that the ground, so they have to drill down, 10 or 15 feet or something. They have to get to what they call natural material, or something, so that you can build on it and it's not going to, shift on you, and so it's stable. So anyway, that ate up quite a bit of money, because that company did not give us 1 cent of a discount, even though it was others were, they didn't. So anyway, we got that done, then poured the footings and started building the cement walls. Then the structure on the inside, had not wood 2x4s, but metal 2x4s. So all that, and I can't remember on the design. I think Vic had a lot to do with what it looked like. What the little control room, the little hallway that led into the spaceship, the other little living quarters. So it was 2 stories. So there's a basement part, and then there was the main ship. But yeah, those, I don't know, things kind of fell in place. We did get district. We were actually able to get a half-time FTE from the district. That's not easy to do in budgets and everything, and it may have gone to full-time now, I don't know, but we were able, the district, after it all got going, I think they saw enough vision that they were willing to put money now into stabilizing it.
Wow.
with a position. So now Vic became half-time. He became half-time teacher and half-time running the center.
Oh.
So that really made a difference. We had a person over there, her name was Loena Cyril. She was over the elementary schools. And she was pretty good. She helped she helped support the whole thing. And I remember one time she said, "Stan, do you know you and I could lose our jobs over this?" And I mean, if things went south and didn't go well, and the money was wasted, and it was in the newspaper, and so it was a little bit risky, but we had enough confidence in it, and Vic, of course, was so good that it just went on, and step by step, and we eventually got it built.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So you've told me a little bit about the kind of the build up to it. I didn't realize that there were so many newspaper articles about, even before it was built, saying, "Hey, they're going to build something." But then eventually you got to the opening day, and you told me about the senator and his speech. Can you tell me more about what the opening day was like? Did you have a big crowd of people there? Was it, or was it kind of more of a reserved thing? Like what would that?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I know that we invited, and again, Vic is so instrumental in all this. I don't want me to sound like, but we invited mayors and university people and community leaders and even business. I think we invited quite a few people to that first opening, to come and we constantly giving tours. And a lot of times we'd have, after it got going, we'd have little groups show up, say, is there any way we can see that thing? So I would, classes and others would come, and they didn't even take they didn't take the mission yet, because a lot of it was still big, but they wanted to go through for tours. So we had a lot of tours going through, building a lot of interest. And but yeah, that's right. I'd kind of forgotten that there were interest in the community, and we had a title of what it was going to be called and it being built, and so there was newspapers were interested in writing articles about it. So again, it all came off pretty well. I wonder if it's the kind of thing where we should have been more scared than we were. Things turned out, but it just fell into place, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And out of curiosity, how did you guys come to land on the name Christa McAuliffe Space Education Center?
I'm pretty sure it was Vic
Mm-hmm.
who chose that name, and it came from the grant that the Krista McAuliffe Education Grant was called. And this happened right after she died in that accident.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was NASA or who. I think might have been a Department of Education grant, or
Mm-hmm.
anyway, they put that grant out there for one for every state. So I think because of that, they had given it, I think Vic felt like that would be a good name for it.
That's really cool.
And where she was a teacher, you know.
Yeah. Wow. How, because you were the principal at this time,
Yeah.
and it seems like there was a lot of community buzz, as we mentioned before. How were the students and the other teachers reacting to all of this? Did some of the teachers feel like you were playing favorites with Vic a little bit, or?
That's a good question. I didn't get that feel, because there were some other teachers doing some really cool things. And so as a principal, I tried to get him back of all of the kinds of things I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
He, by doing that, really kind of fed into other teachers trying some different things. And so the whole school became kind of innovative in a way. And so I didn't feel that unless there was some going on and I didn't realize it. And a whole bunch of kids in the school were interested in it. He didn't just do things with his class. He did things with the whole 6th grade. The first graders would come up. So there were things, it was serving the entire school. So all of the teachers got to be involved in it. So at least that's my recollection. Like I said, maybe there was a little of that, but I didn't feel it for some reason. Because the others, I think, were pretty supportive of the whole thing.
That's really cool. I like that the other teachers felt like they could innovate a little bit more and do more things. Do you remember any of the other things that the other teachers were doing?
There was, well, I'll give you an example. We had a teacher in 1st grade who asked if she could take her classroom and make a little village out of it.
Oh.
And so back then, principals had a little more authority than they might do today, where, with things on building codes and stuff like that. So what happened is she actually built a village. It was called a little town, and it was called the Town of Learning. So around the room, she built, again, they had to build it with 2x4s and little, like one was a little library, one was a store, one was a little theater play where they could put on plays with curtains and everything. One was, a story center. One was a writing center. So all the way around her room was this little village. Then in the middle of the room was her class. So what she would do is, for a good part of the day, the students would be learning in their, normally, but then they would go into the township, and each one of them, like you had a mayor, so you had a city government, you had a store. Some kids would run the store, and others they could make money and they could go buy things in the store, and they had to keep track of everything. They had some kids would be writing plays, and they would put on the play, and they'd charge money for going to the play, and the curtains would open. And kids writing books. They had a little book center where they would sell their little books they would write. So in other words, again, that kind of experiential learning.
Yeah.
So stuff like that started happening. And on her dedication, the post office came and gave her a post number. She got an actual postage.
Oh, really?
For the Town of Learning. So she had her little township, and the mayor came, and so stuff like that. Yeah, just all of it. So
that's really cool.
Kind of inspired, I think, by stuff like what Vic's doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's just really cool to me to hear these stories, and as I've been listening to them, it's like, oh, these have been like the experiential education. Has been a huge part of all of this, and Vic still does some simulations of sorts in his class with government simulations, like he simulates World War II and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, what type of impact has the Space Center had on your career after both while you were principal there and later on when you moved on to Cherry Hill and beyond?
Yeah. Well, I think it was just all, lots and lots of fond memories, of course, and a lot of learning, to take kind of a wild adventure like this, and to be a principal of a school, and to see lots of students and their parents and everybody kind of interested and involved, and see Central become kind of a really unique situation where the whole district was coming on buses here to Central, and so I think it had a huge career or an effect on my career as far as feelings of being a principal and the nature of that, and then I was a little bit sad to leave. I mean, they switched. I was here for, like I said, about, what was it, 10 or 12 years. So that's a long time to be principal in one school. But they did switch me, and I loved Cherry Hill too. It was a good school. I had a whole different experience there, and then I went into the district office. So each part of my career, I've enjoyed each part of it. And I enjoy what I'm doing right now. Utah Valley University is an amazing place. And the students down there, just so fun to see college students and their interest. I think we graduate about 300 teachers a year.
Wow. And
they're great young people, teachers, and a lot of our students are non-traditional, so they've got 3 kids at home and they've decided to come back to school and finish. And so you've got that unique of young students and also non-traditional, a little bit older students in the same class. So it's fun to teach there. But yeah, so I guess I'm sure it's had quite an effect on my career.
Yeah.
To kind of, yeah.
That's cool. Do you have any favorite memories of the Space Center? Anything that really stands out?
One thing that was kind of fun for me, when they had the other school, the office had windows, and you could look out and see the walkway coming into the school. And the buses would pull up, and these kids would get off, and just watching all of them come into the school. And at like 9:30 or something, they'd pull in, and every day we'd have a new bus coming in. So. So we'd have our own kids there, but then we had kids from all over the district coming, and that was kind of a neat memory to see them all kind of excited walking into the school to have their experience. I think just generally, pretty good memories of all of that, and just some parts that were a little scary, taking some risks. And as a principal of a school, and other principals will know what I'm talking about, you always worry about the big one that's going to do you in. A lawsuit or something happens, and there's always that worry in the back of your mind when you're a principal. There's going to be something that's going to, get me fired. And maybe it's something I didn't even do, but it just happens, and I don't know. It's just a little. Maybe it's a false worry, but it's there, and so there's always that little bit of a tension with something like an adventure like this. But I think most of my memories are very fond. I really enjoyed Vic, he was so supportive of the school and of kids and of great teacher and of me, supportive of me and stuff. So that was fun to have teachers like that in the school. That's a great memory. Yeah.
That's cool. Did you ever participate in the simulations in any way? Either going on one yourself or being in the back?
I think we took our faculty on one I think, so the whole faculty, after it was done and we got going, the Vic, we had the whole faculty go on a trip together, and that was kind of fun.
That is fun.
Yeah, kind of building a little bit of camaraderie, I guess. And
that's really cool.
so they could see what it was like. So I went on that one. But most of the time I would observe. It's fun to go in there and just watch groups. Every now and then I'd go in and watch it all taking place. So, yeah.
That's fun. Can you tell me, after the Voyager was built, how did you come to get a new simulator? Because the Voyager was built in about 1990.
Yeah.
It was built in 1990. And then you had another simulator, the Odyssey, or the ISIS, that was kind of started in 1994, 1995. Yeah. How did you get to say, hey, we need another one?
Yeah, so I think that came from the Space Center staff, from Vic and the others, that felt like we would like to have a smaller ship to do some unique missions. And so we had the room. They thought that we could take the back part of that room and still have enough space in there to host classrooms, so they could do their space science and those other kinds of things. So again, excuse me, we had to again raise money for that, and that one I'm trying to get. I think it was more of me notifying the district of what we were going to do rather than getting permission. I just said we're going to build it, and after that, after the Space Center was there, the classroom was dedicated to that. There wasn't a lot of. They said, okay, as long as you know what you're doing, and it has to be up to fire code and those kind. So the fire marshal had to. We had to involve people along the way to make sure that everything was safe, and so they just took the back part of that room and changed it into a smaller ship, and a really cool looking ship inside. I mean, maybe not quite to the level of what you have here today, but it was really quite cool. And so I think there were times they would run a big mission and they would run a smaller mission back there at the same time. Other times a small group would come and they'd run them in the smaller mission. I think it could take up 8 or 9 people in it or something like that. So, yeah.
That's cool.
That's kind of how that came about.
Wow.
So one thing leads to something else.
Yeah, and then eventually you took over the computer lab to build the Magellan, I think.
Yeah.
And then there was another simulator that was built in the cafeteria.
Cafeteria, yeah. And so there was another principal that came, I can't remember his name, after me, and kind of helped support and continue things on. So, yeah.
Where do you hope to see the Voyager concept go in the future?
Well, I think what I would say, I mean, there were, even back then when we were doing it, there was a little bit of criticism of saying, well, it's an imaginary experience. Why are you, we need to deal with real math and real this and that. And I remember one person kind of not supportive over at the district who felt like it was, what we need is real stuff, real math, real this, real that, not this is too much fantasy. And what's come out of that, what I've observed, is those kids, they're so interested that they've never had an experience that's, they come over and they learn space science and other sciences, and then they go in. Yes, it's a little bit of a fantasy, I guess, like Disneyland, but based on some real theory on a lot of it, and also an experience where kids all of a sudden learning can be fun and exciting. And I think we've seen, I can't remember I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of kids now have come through that whole thing. But I think you've seen lots of kids way more interested in math and all the kinds of different sciences and technology. And I think this has helped spur them on. So I think there's been a lot of good come from it. And I think we've had people write letters and others, of what they've done in the future because of that. A lot of kids have worked in the center, and then they've gone on, to other kinds of jobs that are in the technology. And a lot of them, I think, have kind of talk about where they really started to become interested was that experience, either working there or going through the Space Center. So in my mind, I think it's done a lot of good for a lot of kids over time.
That's really cool. And what is your thought in helping to inspire hundreds of thousands of students?
To be honest with you, I haven't really thought. I thought it's going on. I was a little part of it. I think there were others that maybe a bit larger parts of it and what's happened since. But it is nice thinking back that maybe you're, helped in education, that, doing some things that are valuable for the future. And so, so it is. It's a nice feeling.
Well, and you continue to do that today by, I know you said you don't work directly with the students as an associate dean, but you're still helping them and inspiring them to become teachers to eventually inspire more. So
well, it's a good field. It's an important field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, teaching.
That's cool. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share?
I can't really think of anything. I think it's exciting what you're doing, and I have not been back to the Space Center since the new school had been built with the new planetarium and all the new things you have. I'm just blown away. It's just absolutely amazing what you guys have done. So thank you to you for that. The traditions carried on and gotten larger, and it's very stable, and you've had a lot of donors that have really put up the money for this because they believed in it. So anyway, really neat educational success story, I think.
Let's keep going with
You
this.
just said the first half of it.
We rocked a lot of boats over the district office and shook a few people up
Yeah, it was
with some strange things that.
It's kind of a miracle that it got going.
It is.
I don't think you could ever do it again.
Oh, never.
Not today.
Never.
Everything came together right, because you have to get district approval and school board approval, and they have all kinds of questions, and they're worried about the money, and they're worried about everything,
That's right.
It's
That's
just
right.
amazing,
It wouldn't have been done. The right people were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's how it is right now. So,
Yeah.
and Matt's trying to put together this history.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get all of the old timers in, because my memory of those days is pretty shot.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you've been
I just don't
so
remember
many
a
years
lot.
of doing it all. Yeah. I remember when we first, when we finally got it done, we needed music. And so I love stereos and music and stuff. So I went down shopping and got some speakers, quite nice speakers actually, that we put in, and then you had different discs, space music you would play.
We would burn some music onto discs.
Yeah. So it had that feeling. That technology's really come a long way. It was kind of amazing when you first did it. Even that was.
It was pretty.
Yeah.
Some of that was cutting edge.
Yeah. The kids were kind of blown away by.
The old black and white 6-inch computers.
Oh yeah.
Those old Macs.
Yeah, we got.
We kind of pioneered experiential education, Stan.
Yeah,
And that was
that's
kind of
exactly.
back
Yeah.
then. It was people were running little simulations in their rooms, class banks and stuff, but this was kind of the big foray into something beyond that.
Yeah, there's probably across the nation very little, if anything, like this. That first hands-on experience with the sights and sounds, and they're making decisions, and they can crash the ship if they're not careful.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
The ships during your time were the Voyager,
Yeah.
and then we had the Odyssey. And I think we had the Magellan, but we did have the Magellan.
Yeah.
okay.
And I don't know if we had the Galileo in the lunchroom. Did we have that little
Yes.
wooden ship?
Yes.
So we had
and
four.
then a portable.
Oh, the big
planetarium.
bubbles. That's right, the big bubbles.
The little thing you
The Falcon.
blow up with an air. They had to put an air thing in that would make it stay up, and then, yeah.
We kind of
Like
hijacked
one of
the
those-
school.
Well, Vic, do you remember we used to have the darkroom slide? Do you have anything? So the kids would come in
Uh-huh.
and they would get into the darkroom, and then it would turn and they'd
That's
walk
right.
out the other. It had a door, just one door, and so it turned and they walked out the other side, and then they were into the spaceship. So they're coming through, and I remember, I don't know if I'll tell you the story.
Mhm.
We had a little first grader, we had all kinds of classes wanted to come over and take tours. So this teacher brings her little first grade class over. So Vic was busy and I gave her the tour. So the little kids are all lined up, and the first kid goes into the little dark room slide. It goes around, then it comes back and he's gone. And the rest of the kids saw that. We could not get him to go in. Had to take him around the other way. They were just scared the heck out of him. One day, I was in my office, and this lady pulls up in the front, and in this beautiful car, and she gets out. She's just dressed to the nines, quite attractive, and just in this suit. You can tell she's just dripping with money or something. I don't know. She's very business. She comes up, wanted to see the principal, so I had her come in, and she starts asking me lots of questions about the Space Center, and I said, yeah. And so I kind of answered and was trying to be polite, and then she said, and then I think I even showed her a little bit of it, because I was still wondering who she was. But at the end, and she started asking me about Star Trek, and I, before long, I could tell she came from Paramount Pictures.
See, I didn't know this.
And
I'm sure he told me, but I didn't know.
and so I got a little, how we used to use the Star Trek, for part of the thing. And so I told her, I said, do you know one thing? And I still didn't know who she was. This place creates thousands of Star Trek fans. And she said, really? I said, yes. And after that, a little while later, she said, well, thank you so much for showing me. She left, but she was from Paramount Pictures, and they were worried that we're using their
Trademark.
copyright. Yeah, but once she knew that it was creating all these kids who were, Star Trek fans, it became a different story.
I now remember. I remember you came in and told me about it. You came in and we were in the briefing room, that classroom where my desk was, and we had a little couch in the back. And I was sitting there and you came and sat down, and I remember you said somebody had come to see you.
Oh, yeah.
See, these things spark these memories, and I totally forgot. Yeah, they've never come back, Stan, so whatever you said to them did the job.
I was a little worried. I thought, oh, we're in
it
what's
now.
going to happen to us?
You know what happened after that? Because it's coming back to me. After you came in and talked to me about that, I wrote a letter to Paramount, and I explained it,
Yeah.
and they wrote me back and said, how long do you plan on doing this? And I wrote them back and said, well, indefinitely. And they wrote back and said, well, we don't do things indefinitely. We'll get back with you. And they never did.
Oh,
So that was the end of that.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
Well, it I guess the biggest thing is it creates a lot of fans for them,
Yeah.
these kids. I'll tell you another quick one. One day, so Vic got lots of gifts from the government, from other things, but one of the, not for him personally, but for the Space Center, because it was getting to be known across the nation. So Jake Garn who was a senator from Utah, he spoke at the first, when we had the dedication, and he'd been in space, and so we invited him down, remember, and he did that beautiful talk. Well, anyway, he gave Vic a gift from Japan of all of the coins I don't know if you still have them here.
It's
or
up
not.
in the display case
Okay.
upstairs.
And there are some other things that were given to the Space Center. They're from the Japan government and from other places. All the Russian and all these, they make a coin for every spaceship. And they have the whole set. So anyway, again, one time I'm in my office and these two guys come dressed in suits, tall, you know, and they come in and they say, we're FBI agents and we're from the government. We need to check on these things. So they had a list that they were checking off to make sure that everything was still here. So they said, and they wanted me to show them. And I said, I was just being funny, and it was stupid of me. But I said, do you think you could give us the weekend before you come back? not even a smile. Not even a smile. And so I said, yeah, come here. And so we went in and showed them, you know, the different displays and things. So, and then checked them off and left.
Yeah. The thought just keeps coming to my mind, Stan, that if you hadn't been the principal, if there had been anyone else, how easily they just could have said no. Do you realize that?
Yeah, you probably, you know, I was probably young and dumb enough that
it hits me once in a while. All you had to do was say, no, that's a crazy idea. When I came in and said, can we have this classroom? You know, it could have just been an easy, no, just keep doing what you're doing in the gym. But that, you know, just, it's like I say, this place wouldn't be here if the right people weren't in the right place at the right time. And this wasn't, though, Central, was it your first principal assignment?
Yeah.
So you were new and you didn't know enough to say no.
Well, the idea of, you know, that, I don't know, the whole idea seemed, and those kids were so excited and, you know, it just seemed like this is, you know, an important thing for this school, you know, and then now it's just amazing what's happened.
I mean, it was your backing and enthusiasm that also convinced Dr. Searle to come on board as well. Remember old Luana?
Yeah.
Because
she was kind of the right person at the right time too.
She still was, because she listened and thought it was an okay idea.
Yeah.
And she was okay when we already dug the hole for the Voyager before getting permission. Do you remember that?
I kind of do.
We brought in the backhoe and
started digging,
and then we dug the hole. We dug the hole for the Voyager before we even had permission from the board to even start building. We pushed the envelope big
time. Not the way we do things,
I know.
Stan.
They kept saying.
There's steps you have to go through.
And maintenance department kept calling it the black hole.
Yeah. Then we had to hire. One of the things we had to do is hire that company to come to test the ground, because if you're going to build a building, you can't just build it. We didn't know that. We thought, well, we'll just hire No, you got to hire an engineering company to come over, and they have to test the ground to make sure that it's solid, and you know, and that you can pour footings and all of that. So that took about $5,000 of the money.
It did. That money was going fast.
So, yeah.
We'd sit down and say, well, we got this bill, and Stan would say, you have the money, right? Let's just forge ahead.